Hi everyone. Today we're going to be doing some deseasonalisation of this data, and in this example we have 3 years worth of data which has been collected 4 times a year, so quarterly data. Now the same technique could be used if you had different number of data points per year, but this example is from our textbook, 3 years quarterly data. Now in order to process this data, we need to do a little bit of reformatting, if you like. So I'm going to set up a table over here for the quarterly values, and I'm going to have the years at the side. So my first year is 2015, 2016, 2017. Now, I don't really want to have to retype these numbers. So if I select those 4, Control-C to copy, and I'll put the cursor here in the first cell, but I want them to go horizontally this time. So on the paste, I do a little drop down, and then I use this option to transpose. You can see the numbers there are now in the right orientation. So I have to repeat that. Copy the next set of data, go to where I want, and transpose. It's fairly quick once you get the hang of it. Copy, cursor where I want it, transpose. There's my data. Now if you had a larger data set, that might take a bit longer, but it's definitely worth the effort. Now, if I want to do seasonal indices, the first thing I need is a yearly average value. We want Excel to do the work for us. So I'm starting the formula with an equals sign. The command in Excel is the word average, open a bracket, highlight the cells that contain the data. You can see the reference there, N4 to Q4 is this block of cells. Close the brackets, and there's my yearly average. I will copy that downwards, and the nice thing is that as I copied downwards, the reference changed from N4 to N5. And if I went down to that one, it changes to N6. Sorry about that beep, I probably just got an email. Now, that's the year average. Now I need the indices. So I'll need index number 1, index number 2. These are just labels. You could type anything you liked for these, really. Anything that made sense, anything that was going to remind you of what is stored. So to calculate the index, I need to remember take the raw value, this one, and divide by the year average. I want to be able to copy that across though, don't I? So we start with equals. I click the cell that holds the original data, in this case the first quarter for 2015. The / is divide by, and I want to divide by the year average. Now if I just use the formula like that, both of those references, N4 and R4, are what we call relative references. As we copy the formula, the references move to the next cell. But I don't really want the year average to move. When I do the next one, when I copy this cell to the right, I still want to be looking at cell R4. Now the way to make sure that it doesn't slide across is to put a $sign. Sorry, I missed when I clicked then. I put a $sign in front of the letter R. That fixes column R in that formula. So it calculates nicely. There it is, N4 divided by R4. And as I drag across, if I examine the formula here, then I'm on to O4, so that first reference moved over the way I wanted, but the next one still says the $sign in front of the R prevented the R from changing to S. And it would have broken the formula if it did that. Check this one, it still says R4. Check this one, it still says R4. That's an example of a fixed reference. And the first one here, without the $signs, is a relative reference, the one that updates. Now that I've got my first year's worth of data there for 2015, I can copy those down. And notice it still says column R, but it said it did jump from row 4 to row 5 as I needed. Same here, still on column R, but jumped to row 5. So be careful to just have the $ in front of the letter, not the number. And that gives me my individual indices for each of the years. The next step in the process is to average all of the first quarter indices. And if I copy those across, that one there will average the second quarter indices. There it is, T4 to T6, and so on. Now I just want to double check that everything is working okay. Remember the idea, if there are 4 indices, the sum of those 4 indices, because we've got quarterly data, should equal 4, and it does. That's a good little double check there to show me. Now I don't need that number 4, I can throw that away now, but now that I've checked that it worked, I'm confident that we're on track. These are the seasonal indices averaged over my multiple years worth of data. The first thing I want to do is copy them, and then when I paste this time, I will do this one, pasting values. Now I know it looks the same. If I sit on that cell there, you see how there's a formula? And if I sit on that cell there, it's just the result of the formula. That's important. Now I'm going to copy these, and I'm going to come back over here, and I'll do one of those transpose pastes again, so that these 4 indices match quarter 1 to 4. I'll copy them and drop them in for year 2016 and drop them in for year 2017 as well. So these are my average indices. Next step is to deseasonalize my data. So I take the, I need an equal sign. I start with the raw data value. I divide by, in this case, the first quarter index. And I don't need to worry about $ now, because each of these 2 columns, C and D, contains a data point and an index that matches. That's first quarter data, first quarter index, second quarter data, and so on, second quarter index. So I can copy them directly. Well, that's a little shortcut. I'll go back and show you that again. If I sit on that little square in the corner and do a double left click, it copies down the rest of the column. Now that's my deseasonalized data. This is where I processed it. This is my data table with the raw data, the average indices and the deseasonalized. I probably don't need that second set of numbers sitting there anymore. If I had have tried to do the transpose paste here, let's just demonstrate that. It gives me very strange numbers. That's supposed to be the indices. Why did it give me such strange numbers? Because it's transposed the formulas. That's now asking Excel, that was a formula over there, an average between 4 cells. That's now saying an average, and it's a different 4 cells. So this is important, that you don't try and do a transpose paste of the formulas, or it'll go funny. You do you copy those into cells as just the values, then transpose the values across. Now let's see if we can get a bit of a chart going here. I would like to plot my raw data. I'm pressing and holding the control key while I highlight the deseasonalized data. On the insert tab, I will use a line graph, and I'll choose the first option there. That looks nice. So the raw data is the blue sawtooth shape. You can see it's quite seasonalized. The 4th quarter of each year seems to be quite a drop. And this is the deseasonalized data. There's still a few little bumps, but it's much smoother, showing an underlying trend. Now it's nice to be able to have some labels at the bottom of this chart that are more sensible than just 1 to 12. So what I'll do is go to the formatting, go to the design tab, then selecting data. This is while the chart was highlighted. And I've got the horizontal category axis labels. I can edit that, and then I will select these columns here. So the years, and look at that, it formats it nicely with years and quarters and I'll accept that, and I might change the name of this. Let's edit that data series. That was the first one, the blue one, and we'll call that raw data. And it changes the name there in the legend. Let's click on series 2, and we can call this the deseasonalized data. There it goes. That's nice. Probably the only thing that I would consider adding would be some sort of a trend line added to this series. So I'll click on the deseasonalized data series. I'll use the little plus icon here to do a trend line. Try not to just tick the box. Move across to the other options. There are different types of trend lines you can put. A straight line, an exponential, that's a curvy type of one, and there's more options. The more options you go to, there's more choices. The most important ones that I like are display the equation and display the R squared value on the chart. So there they are. That's a little box. I can move that around. I can make that a bit bigger. I can even put some highlight behind there if I want to make it stand out a bit. Try not to choose colours that are too difficult for readers to look at. The little dotted trend line there is probably fading into the background a bit. I can format that if I wish by first selecting it, then going to format in the selection, and with the trend line, I think it's the little bucket, there it is. I can change the colour, I can change the thickness of that trend line. I might make it, what's a good colour to pick? Say, let's make it blue. There we go. It changes the legend down here as well. If I want to click on the orange one while I'm still here, I can make that one a bit thinner if I want, so it's not so overpowering. All these different ways to communicate. Of course, the chart title, well, we would have to change that to be something appropriate. I'm not too sure. I think this was just made up data. Now, I think that's probably enough. If there's things in here that you're not quite sure of, you can always look up what that meant. In textbook or elsewhere, you can do your own research. But that's the way that I would recommend using Excel to deseasonalize multiple years worth of data. This has been a bit of a long video. Thanks for sticking with me, and see you next time.